So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, joined by Oldham Athletic fan Keith Gledhill. Well, Keith, great to meet you and great to have you on the show. We're going to start talking about Oldham Athletic season, which unfortunately hasn't gone great so far. But what are your views on it as an Oldham fan?
As an Oldham fan, I am fearing the worst. I've been to every home game this season, and I think we've won 2 league matches at home all season. The performances have been poor, to say the least, in the majority of the matches. We have seen recently a couple of decent games, but generally speaking, the whole mood of the club is very very low. There's a little bit of toxicity, but I think in terms of performances on the pitch, I'm fearing the worst in terms of not being able to get out to the bottom 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no ex-Premier League club has, of course, gone down to the National League as well. So that's something that Oldham fans will really be fearing as well. Not the honour they would want. But in terms of Keith Curle, things not quite working out for him. What do you think went wrong for Keith Curle in the end? Or do you think it is a case of maybe the owners, like no matter who takes over Oldham at this point, it's going to be a huge struggle?
Yeah. Keith was brought in around about March of last season as an interim manager to the end of the season. Saw us through, although the playing record wasn't the best, and then was given the job permanently during the summer. I believe it was a 2-year contract, and again didn't start the season in the best of form. Things just started round about October. Things just started to turn the corner a little bit in terms of performances, winning a couple of matches. We won our second home game against Port Vale, who were then certainly in the top 3. They might have actually been second in the table. Great performance, beat them 3-2. The mood in the camp afterwards was pretty good. Just to explain as well, I help out with the match day commentary for the local hospital radio, so I'm able to attend the post-match interviews with the Oldham manager, and he was very upbeat and looking forward to obviously continuing some sort of run. As it happened, we travelled to Northampton on the following Tuesday, put in a below par performance, lost 2-1, and the following day Mr. Curle was relieved of his duties by mutual consent, I think the official line from the club was, which came as a little bit of a shock in terms of it being a surprise. It wasn't really a surprise due to the current owner's history of getting rid of managers almost ad lib, and that's the situation. I firmly believed that with his experience, particularly in League Two, bringing Carlisle from the foot of the table. Also, he was manager at Northampton. Strangely enough, is the last game that he was manager of Oldham Athletic, got them promoted. So I just felt that there was, again, it was a hasty decision. A lot of the fans weren't happy with the quality of football that Mr. Curle was putting on the pitch. But as you know as well as I do, in football, things aren't, you haven't got an instant fix. And I think you've got to look a little bit more long term rather than, over the immediate few weeks. Since he's been sacked, things haven't really progressed. We haven't won another game since then, although we had a quite remarkable 5-5 draw against the league leaders Forest Green just before Christmas, which was a first for me in terms of seeing the number of goals at Boundary Park. But I think in terms of Keith Curle, I think again it's another example of the owners' hire 'em and fire 'em attitude, and obviously that's been questioned many times in the past.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since Curle you did part ways with Curle. You've got a new manager, caretaker manager at least, called Selim. I'm trying to pronounce this correctly. Selim Benachour, I believe his name is, of course, caretaker manager.
Yeah,
Obviously never managed in this country. What have you made of him so far? But do you think he is only short term?
Yeah, well, Selim has been promoted. He was in charge of the academy at Oldham Athletic, so he's been brought in. Like you say, he's got no experience of certainly managing in England. I don't know what his previous managerial experience is, but he's certainly more of a coach than a manager, as I think the modern day terminology dictates. There's not many managers now. There seem to be more head coaches. And again, like I say, having attended a couple of the post-match interviews, he seemed a nice enough chap. But in terms of what he's got to work with, obviously he inherited a squad mid-November. Obviously, he's not been able to add to that squad up until the January transfer window. So he's steadied the ship a little bit. Like I say, we had the 5-5 draw against Forest Green on the 11th, I think it was, of December. We didn't play the following week, and then the only other time that we've seen him at Boundary Park was on Boxing Day, when we had a massive game against Scunthorpe United, who were at the time bottom of the Football League. Oldham were second bottom, and despite taking the league, we ended up losing 3-1. So that promptly put us at the foot of the table, and we've had a couple of 0-0 draws over the Christmas and New Year period away from home, but there's been a couple of matches postponed recently, including Saturday's match. So I think in terms of what Mr. Benachour can actually add to the club, I think he's just an interim coach, keeping things ticking over. Whether we'll actually see a permanent manager appointed between now and whenever remains to be seen, I think.
Yeah, and of course, in terms of bright spots this season, I guess you can say there are a couple of players who have not done too bad. Keeler Dunn and Bahambula. I mean, particularly Bahambula, I know is very highly rated. Obviously those two players, do you feel like it might be a struggle to keep hold of them in this window, or do you think that, of course, they are two players who really can pull Oldham over the line in this relegation battle?
Yeah, in terms of Dylan Bahambula, he joined the club at the start of last season, the season when it was played behind closed doors. Now, again, because of the commitments with the local hospital radio, I was fortunate, if that is the right word, to go to every home match last season. So I was able to witness Dylan Bahambula's skill on the pitch. There's no doubt that he's a skillful player, tricky player. We often mention in commentary that the opposition haven't got a clue what he's going to do next, because he probably doesn't know what he's going to do next. So he has got that ability to look extremely good. He's also got the ability to drift out of a game and not get involved and almost look a passenger. So certainly in terms of the position that we find ourselves in, I think he's certainly a player to have who maybe can come off the bench and have an impact on games. But like I say, he does tend to drift out of games. He's got to be, his strength is on the ball, and he'll run at a defender, and yes, he'll get tackled more often than not, but in the quality of football, the quality of opposition that we're playing against, he's got that ability to spring things and make things happen. So whether he will actually, I think he will remain at the club. There was some interest from Middlesbrough pre-season. I think he went up there for a week training. Obviously Middlesbrough at the time were under Neil Warnock and were struggling a little bit, but they didn't pursue the interest in him. So it remains to be seen whether anybody will take the chance and chance their arm, if you like, to take Bahambula away from Boundary Park. In terms of Davis Keeler Dunn, he signed a new contract at the start of the season. Again, he might have been a 2-year contract. I'm not quite sure, because the club is under a bit of a transfer embargo. But he's always been a player, again, who certainly his work rate and his effort is far superior to Dylan Bahambula, but he's also got that knack and that ability to score some really good goals. So again, there's not been much speculation on social media and the like in terms of anybody being interested in Davis Keeler-Dunn, but he's certainly one player that I think needs to start, play regularly. Again, he will have his off days, but he's certainly got the capability and the skill to help the cause.
Yeah, and of course, I'm going to mention the promotion back in 1991 to the top flight now for Oldham. And of course, them couple of seasons in the Premier League that you had in 92, 93 and 93, 94. Obviously, you know, despite the relegation in 94, some positive memories there from an Oldham point of view. What do you remember from that period for the club? Yeah,
some very happy memories. We don't mention the relegation in 94, particularly we don't mention the equaliser that a certain player scored in the FA Cup semi-final, which again we'll gloss over quickly. In terms of the seasons leading up to the promotion in 91, of course, the season before that, Oldham were everybody's favourite second team. They got to the FA Cup semi-final where they lost to Manchester United after a replay. They also got through to the Littlewoods Cup final in 1990, which they lost 1-0 to Nottingham Forest. First time that I've seen my club at Wembley. I have seen them there in that match that we won't mention in the FA Cup semi-final in '94. But there was a general sort of momentum at the club. The club just missed out on reaching the playoffs simply because they played so many games, had games cancelled because of the cup commitments, and it eventually became a mountain too steep to climb because they had so many games. I think they played after they played at Wembley. It was the 29th of April. I remember it because it's my wife's birthday. I think in the last 2 weeks of the season they played four or maybe 5 games. They were playing literally every other day. So I think tiredness and fitness told in the end, and they just missed out on a playoff. But what it did do, like I say, it created a momentum at the club. There was some quality players there, the likes of Andy Ritchie, Neil Adams, Rick Holden. We had Dennis Irwin, but that summer he was sold to Manchester United, and what he did at Manchester United, I think if you ask Sir Alex Ferguson, he'll say that it's the best £700,000 he's ever spent. But we had a team there that could play, albeit we did have a plastic pitch, which again was a little bit divided opinion on to whether or not Latics were a good team or not. But I think we proved it the following year because we won something like 10 or 11 away matches, and in a never to be forgotten final day of the season, we came back from 2-0 down against Sheffield Wednesday to score literally a last-minute penalty to win 3-2. The results went for us elsewhere, and we ended up being the second division champions on the 11th of May, 1991. Like I said, a never-to-be-forgotten day, and I have fond memories of running on the pitch at the end and crying my eyes out because it was a day of celebration. Of course, we went up to the First Division, as it was the last season of the old First Division, and we survived, and we became founder members of the Premier League at the start of the 1992-93 season. Again, we ended up playing in the top division for 3 seasons before we got relegated. So, yeah, some really good memories. Lots of notable games, some great goals, and a great team. And yeah, look back on them fondly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other memories that must stand out for you was when you faced Liverpool in 2013 in the FA Cup. It was a 3-2 win at home. It must have been a great memory, really, from an Oldham point of view. They had some good players on the pitch that day as well under Brendan Rodgers. And yeah, I mean, that was a really highlight, really, of Oldham's last decade or so.
We've had a few cup runs. Again, certainly since sort of 2010. Well, just before that, we actually, I think it's 2008. we actually went to Everton on third round day and won 1-0. That was a memorable game. And then in that time, we were still a League One team. We were always mid-table or below, generally fighting relegation, which we managed to maintain our status. But the game that you refer to there against Liverpool was part of a 3-match series. We'd gone to Nottingham Forest in the third round. Forest were a top championship team. Like I said, we were League One. We went 1-0 down just before half time, but we came back and scored 3 goals in no less than 15 minutes. Right in front of the travelling Oldham fans. I was there with my son and a friend, so it was great memories. And that gave us a 4th round tie at home to Liverpool. At the time, the club was in the bottom 4 of League One. There was rumours that Paul Dickoff, who was the manager, his position was in danger. And indeed, I think just shortly after we beat Liverpool, he was actually sacked by the then owner, Simon Corney. But in terms of the Liverpool game, again, at a memorable occasion, it was shown live on national TV. Big Matt Smith, who some people will remember, caused havoc in the Liverpool team. The Liverpool team that day had the likes of Luis Suarez. They had Jordan Henderson. They also had Raheem Sterling as well, who was playing for Liverpool at the time. As well as, I think the only 2 players who weren't on the pitch at the start were Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher. It was pretty much a first 11 for Liverpool. And we survived by the skin of our teeth. Fantastic match, 3-2 victory, despite Steven Gerrard coming on with about 20 minutes to go and hitting the bar and living by the seat of our pants. And that got us through to the 5th round of the FA Cup that season, where we faced Everton. And again, that was quite a tussle. We took them to a replay at Goodison Park and eventually lost 3-1. But yeah, certainly the Liverpool game was one of the highlights of the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to ask now, in terms of memories, Keith, your favourite ever Oldham Athletic player and manager, please.
Well, the manager, I was fortunate enough to see 2 great managers. Jimmy Frizzell, who took over as manager just as I started watching Oldham in 1969. He was there for 12 years, took the club from the bottom of the old 4th division, got them promoted the following season into the 3rd division, and then in 1974 we were the 3rd division champions and got promoted into the old 2nd division, the 2nd tier, where we stayed for whatever it was, 16, 17 years until we got promoted in 1991. So certainly Jimmy Frizzell has got to be up there, and it's literally a toss-up between Jimmy and, of course, Joe Royle, who took over from Jimmy Frizzell in 1981, I think it was. Again, steadied the ship and took us on that great run of the FA Cup and Littlewoods Cup double in 1990, and then obviously got us promoted, kept us up in and became founder members of the Premier League in 92. And then he actually left us in the autumn of 94 to go to Everton. Everton took him, and that same season he actually won the FA Cup for Everton. So I think it's a toss-up between Jimmy Frizzell and Joe Royle as to who would be my favourite. I would probably just fall on the side of Joe Royle, simply because I was a bit older and a bit wiser in terms of being able to appreciate the achievements that we made under Joe Royle. In terms of a favourite player, I'm going to go back to the early to mid 70s. I was 11, just coming up to my 11th birthday, and Oldham were on a long unbeaten run, heading towards promotion and winning the third division title in the spring of 1974. And Jimmy Frizzell bought a player called Alan Groves from Bournemouth. Alan, for people who were there at the time, left a lasting memory. He was at Boundary Park for about 4 years, helped us get promoted. He was a left winger. He was strong. He was quick. He had so much skill. We mentioned Dylan Bahambula before. Dylan Bahambula couldn't tie Alan Groves' shoelaces. He was a fantastic player, and certainly someone who left a lasting memory to any Latics fan who was lucky enough to see him. I'm actually doing some research at the moment, and if time and work commitments allow, I'm hoping to write a biography about Alan Groves, but that's a work in progress. Sadly, Alan left Boundary Park in the autumn of 1978, I think. No, it was 77, and went to Blackpool, played the season out at Blackpool, and then, unfortunately, in the summer of 1978, he died. He was only 29. I think there was a heart defect of some sort. He actually lived just round the corner from where I live at the moment. That was where he passed away. But it's a bit of a sad story, but certainly my memories of Alan Groves mean that he's probably my favourite player of all time. Closely followed by the likes of Andy Ritchie. Andy Ritchie is a legend at Oldham Athletic in terms of what he did on the pitch. He also became the club manager, but certainly from my personal point of view, Alan Groves is my favourite Oldham Athletic player of all time.
Yeah, and final question I've got for you, Keith, is regarding the owner. Obviously, the issue with Oldham the last couple of years has been their owner. It does seem like Abdallah Lemsagam, sorry if I haven't pronounced that right, is about to is looking at selling the club at the moment, and he is looking at any bidders. How important do you think it is that the sale does go through and Oldham have, a new lease of life breathed into the club? How important do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a lot more complicated. I mentioned earlier on a chap called Simon Corney. Simon was part of a trio of New York-based English businessmen who bought the club and the assets. There's quite a bit of land in and around Boundary Park, and Simon Corney bought the club. I think it was 2005. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was 2005. They saw the benefits of buying the club and the assets in terms of what they could use the land for. As it happened, they were planning to redevelop the land, knock the ground down, move the club lock, stock and barrel, and build a new ground elsewhere in the borough of Oldham, and utilise the land and the assets to build houses and apartments and what have you. And obviously that was their intention to make a few quid. As it happened, the bottom fell out of the housing market, and the club basically struggled from one crisis to another before the current owner, Abdallah Lemsagam, came in and allegedly bought the club. As it happens, it appears that he hasn't bought the club and all its assets. He's just bought the trading name, shall we call it, of Oldham Athletic. He came in a whirlwind. Everybody was pleased to get rid of Mr. Corney, although, as it turns out, we never actually got rid of him because he still owns most of the ground and the land and what have you. That's a detail. The exact detail I'm not privy to, but that's the general concept, if you like, of what the current situation is at the moment. Mr. Lemsagam appointed his brother as the sporting director, who's in charge of recruitment, and certainly a lot of his recruits have been questionable, to say the least. Things have generally well, within 6 months of him taking over, we got relegated from League One into League Two, where we've remained ever since. His recruitments haven't been particularly good. We discussed the managers previously. He's pretty much a hire 'em and fire 'em. I've lost count of the number of managers that Oldham have had in the 4 years. It's just coming up to 4 years since he took over. I would imagine that we're well into double figures, 13, maybe 14. And I think certainly the happenings of this season, where there have been protests, there have been pitch invasions during games, there have been marches outside the ground, generally conveys that the fan base are not happy one little bit with Mr. Lemsagam, and I think he's issued a statement this week that says that he's prepared to listen to bids to buy the club. Now, what those bids are and what they're actually buying, again, remains to be seen. But I think in terms of wiping the slate clean, certainly a new owner needs to get everything under one roof in terms of the club, the land, the ground, the assets, how much money that will take, and whether people are prepared to put that sort of money in. I estimate somewhere between 15 and 20 million is probably needed to get everything back under one ownership. Whether we can get somebody or a consortium to fork that sort of money out remains to be seen. So I think it's good news. I think there's a lot of Latics fans who seem to think that it's going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. I think it will take time, and what it mustn't do is detract from the immediate priority of maintaining our Football League status. If Oldham Athletic do get relegated, which, like I said, I fear the worst. I've yet to be convinced that anything other than the bottom two finish is realistic. If we do lose our Football League status, you only have to look at the likes of Chesterfield, Wrexham, Notts County, Stockport, Torquay, to name but a few. It's not an easy division to get back out of, the National League, or the Conference as it was called. So I think the immediate priority is clearly maintaining our Football League status. How long it will take for new owners to get what they want, again, is pure conjecture at the moment. These things don't happen overnight, and all we can do is wait and see on that front.
Yeah, I was going to ask as well, Keith, if you're going to make a prediction of where you think Oldham will finish this season, right now, where are you saying?
Bottom two. I can't see any. There's a lack of quality in the squad. We have got a very good youth and academy system. There've been 2 or 3 players who have come through that, been given their chance in the first team, and despite them, there's 2 in particular. Harry Vaughan, who's a central midfield player, and there's a young left back called Benachour. Both have established themselves as first team players now, despite them both being, I think Harry's still 17, Benny was 18 in August, September. But they are 2 players who have been with the club for a while in terms of coming up, growing up, becoming professional footballers. They are probably 2 of our most saleable assets. There are rumours that Premier League clubs are looking at both players. Again, whether Mr. Lemsagam decides to cash in and get some of his investment back by selling these 2 players remains to be seen. We're on the 13th of January. We're almost halfway through the transfer window. There's been no incoming new signings as yet. A couple of our loan players that we had before Christmas have gone back to the parent club, so there is a little bit of space there. But it remains to be seen, certainly what happens in the rest of the transfer window. But until there is some noticeable incomings and an improvement in performances on the pitch, like I said earlier on, I am currently fearing the worst. And I think, like I say, if you want my current prediction, I think we'll finish bottom two.
Yeah, well, that's something that time's always happening anyway, Keith. But thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and meeting you. And yeah, good luck to Oldham Athletic for the rest of the season.
Okay, Sam, thanks for the invitation. Good to speak to you. And if you ever want any future update, please get in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Thank you.
All the best to you.